What is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Inspire By It. My name's Will and I make an assortment of music under the moniker Hush Child. A few of you have been crying out for a Saib beat breakdown. If you're not familiar, Saib is a wonderful boom bap / lo-fi producer that really is my choice for that lo-fi sound of the summer. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it. Okay, so this was such a great suggestion. So if you've shouted out Saib in the comments, I do appreciate you. He wasn't really on my radar and it's definitely taken me a few attempts to get this one right, but I think I've got something that you guys will like. You've obviously heard a snapshot of it in the introduction to this video. Let's jump straight into it. I'm going to mostly focus on this section of music. And I'm not really going to dive into the processing because if you've seen my previous episode, I've covered a lot of Lifeline console. So I'll touch upon these elements, but I'm not really going to dive into the processing of each instrument as I normally do because there's probably going to be a lot of overlap. If you haven't seen that episode already, do make sure you head over that way after this video. It's linked in the top right there. Okay, so the first place that I started was this piano, and all I did was just Google jazzy lo-fi chords. I wanted it to start off in a familiar sounding place, so I've gone with the scale of A major. As you can see here, just switch that scale function on. I've also made sure to play this in live and then adjust the velocities as well. So most of the time for this song, but not always, my lowest notes in pitch are the quietest and my highest notes in pitch are normally the loudest. So we've got a little bit of a roll happening in terms of pitch and velocity. It's a lovely little loop that we could just use on its own. You already know that if you're part of the Patreon, just head over there. You can download the stems and samples from this project as well as other goodies. Something that I wanted to mention before we move away from the piano is just this little trick that I have here. You'll notice that the intro piano sounds like this. And I have another piano line grayed out above and it sounds like this. No sound. The reason for that is I'm using the decent sampler. A lot of pianos come with this noise floor knob parameter module that you can switch on and off. With the claustrophobic piano, which is free, don't forget, if you've seen my other videos, you know that I don't stop banging on about this thing. If we turn the note gain up, we get this. But you also notice that there's some floor noise, some pedal noise there, and that's RT and pedals, and that's all I have here. That creates a really great sense of realism for pianos like the grand piano that I've got from Ableton, just the free pack there. Adds a little sense of realism. Every time those chords are released, I've got a little bit of foot control. So just a little bit of advice as a producer to try and fool your listeners into making this a real believable space that is full of character and humanization rather than something that's absolutely perfect made in the computer. So going into the main section, I made sure to quantize these chords a little bit more. It's going to make sure that your other busy elements can be more heard, and these are just a strict character within the mix. So hopefully you can hear the difference there between our intro chords and our main chord progression. The next thing that I brought in was the guitar. It's quite easy to choose a little bit of an offbeat guitar. I'm using the Ample Sound semi-hollow guitar. You've seen it feature on the channel before, and I noticed that my tracks are becoming more and more guitar focused. So hopefully that's a good thing. Do let me know in the comments if there's any other particular instruments you want to see. But as somebody who doesn't play guitar, this is such a welcome addition to my musical arsenal. Just being able to play it in like a keyboard for it to sound pretty realistic as well. There's plenty of different parameters that we can change to make it sound more strummed, more picked, harmonics, palm muting, all of that good stuff. So as long as you don't mind spending a little bit of time articulating how the notes are performed, I think you'll get good results. The first thing that I did with this guitar, I'm not really sure on the technical term, do let me know, but I did this kind of chicken scratch, almost like reggae upstroke thing here. And that's kind of just complementing the chords on the offbeat, as I said. And I'm pretty much high passing and adding a little bit of reverb to these chords. They sound a little bit more full without the processing. So just high passing it and construing the EQ with EQ8 there, and then adding Lifeline Expanse. Just add in a little bit of slapback reverb, a little bit of delay as well. And then just add in a little bit of saturation on the high end and compressing that guitar there with Lifeline Console. To accompany those little offbeat triads that I've programmed in, which are just copying some of the lowest notes in the piano, I've got this little arpeggio as well. And this is kind of more of a washed out shoegaze feel. Again, notice that the velocities are up, down, up, down, up, down. So we've got some quieter notes that occur on the offbeats, the louder notes are occurring on the downbeats. The final guitar line, I wanted to be a lead line. I wanted it to be quite funky and quite picked. So we've got this lead line from Ample Sound. Again, velocity, very important. Making sure that I've got these palm muted notes at the top here. So listen out for those. And then down here, making sure that I've got a louder downbeat, and then anything that falls between two notes is slightly quieter as well, and a little bit more restricted, a little bit more staccato in its playing. It sounds like this. It would sound so much more different if I took these notes and just made sure that they were all the same velocity. So you want to make sure that there's that humanization there, and that's also why these notes So you want to make sure that there's that humanization there, and that's also why these notes aren't really quantized. And I've coupled that guitar with another guitar that's just panned to the right, and it's playing 7 semitones above. It's a little bit more washed out than the last guitar that you heard. Again, the plugins on these using a lot of Lifeline Expanse and Console here, and they're just the EQ to restrict those frequencies that I want to be heard or not heard. See how much more muffled those guitars are without the use of Lifeline. So let's play all of those elements together. So I really like that. It's quite busy, but I've made sure that all the instruments sit in their respective places. So you're going to see on the right-hand side, levels are really important, and panning is especially important. Make sure that your individual instruments sit in their own space designed for that sound. We're down here on the bass, and I'm using the Ableton Electric Bass Open once again. I've got two different presets here, with the electric bass open on this track and then the electric bass palm on this track. So we've got a little bit of palm muting just to give it a little bit of a different feel. The palm muting only has the EQ 8 on it just to roll off any of those harsh fret sounds. And that sounds like this. And finally, I'm met with the brass. There's 3 brass elements, and I'm using Opus or East West. Still haven't cancelled that subscription. They are bleeding me dry, but the sounds are impeccable. So with the first Opus trumpet line, I'm using the Goliath preset, and I'm met with 3 legato notes and then a stab and then 2 offbeat stabs here. Velocity with this one didn't matter as much, but I did tone them down towards the end. And we're just backing up some of those offbeat hits with this kind of more lead line trumpet, I guess. Again, we're met with a downbeat and then an offbeat, 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 but these are all staccato and drenched in reverb. You'll notice that they're not really quantized as well. I want this track to sound really human, as if it was recorded in the studio. And then finally, this is going to sound a bit weird, but I've got these legato trombone notes. You might be able to hear a little bit of sidechain ducking, but you've probably also noticed that the volume is a bit weird. And if I hit A, we can see that I've got a little bit of gain automation, making sure that the notes come in really loud. They kind of fade out towards the middle and they charge back up before the end. This is so it emulates a little bit more of that realism. They come in really strong, they lean out from the microphone and then they lean back in. Sounds weird on its own, but when we play them together, you can't really notice it. Let's listen to all my melodies together so you get a sense of what is going on. Alright, so finally that brings us to the drums. I've started designing drums for the new sample pack. If you don't know already, my lo-fi sample pack is completely free and in the description below. And the new sample pack is on a boom bap tip. It'll be well on its way towards the end of summer. Might even include this track in the pack. If you want to see it, let me know or head over to the Patreon. I've got some very clean kicks that I designed in UVI Drum Designer along with the snares, coupling that with some of the sounds from my actual Gretsch drum kit. Almost like a tennis ball kick, this one, with a little bit of subbiness just to elongate the tone of the drum there. The envelope follower here is just to send to the bass track so that anytime the kick plays, some of those low frequencies at around 43 hertz are just ducked a little bit so that those two really warm frequencies aren't fighting for center attention. Then we got the snare. About 3 sounds layered together there to make the snare tone. Got some ghost notes and a one shot there to again give it a little bit of realism. It's all about velocity. Got some claps, pretty self-explanatory, really tight with the EQ, a line delay just to set them a little bit wider. And then a bunch of different sounds with the hi-hats. First thing you'll notice is just straight down beats, the first beat being the loudest, second beat being a little bit quieter to emulate a drummer's performance. But once I programmed them in, it was about adding the live tambourine, pitching that down a little bit, some open hi-hats, and then some noise that you'll hear on the off beats, pretty much in any space where the hi-hat doesn't play. Again, to give it a sense of realism, make it a little bit more interesting than just a straight hi-hat pattern. Lifeline, giving it a little bit of noise there. Creating a little bit more of a vintage tone. Giving it some muffle with the EQ there, the EQ rolling it off, some compression. A little bit of wear module, just warping the pitch ever so slightly. Let's put all of the drums together. It looks fairly quantized as well, but as you zoom in, you'll notice that some elements are playing just ahead of the bar line. So again, trying to keep it fairly realistic, even though it's a rigid anchor point to the track. And we were just topping things off with this splice noise static loop. If it was my own track, I wouldn't normally add this sound, but because we're trying to replicate some of the inspirations from Saib, I found that we've got that noisy staticness in a lot of his tracks. So that's just going to bubble underneath. And then apart from that, just in the introduction, I've got some risers to signify the start of the track and the end of the introduction. And that offbeat kind of chicken scratch guitar, again, if I'm using the wrong term, do correct me in the comments. I'm just drenching that in Valhalla Vintage Verb towards the end with the mix tool here. Let's hit A. You can see that I'm drenching that all the way to about 50%. And I'm also just rolling off some of the high end as well. So it becomes more distant in the introduction to the song. Let's listen to everything together. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So there we have it, guys. Another one crossed off the list. What did you think of today's breakdown? Did you make it this far in the video. Not sure whether to carry on this one and maybe release it, maybe do a collaborative release. You know that if I do, I'm going to be using DistroKid to support all my collabs and put them out to streaming services. They make it super easy to use the splits tool to make sure that both collaborators or all collaborators get an even split of the revenue. I wouldn't want to release my music with anybody else. Now, moving on, I featured a little segment in my last episode with Excite Audio, just to underline in some of the music that I've been listening to. So I'm always looking to the future for what the next moves are going to be in musical trends and generally just what albums I'm most excited about. And it's looking like it's going to be a little rock themed summer, especially towards the end of the year. We've got releases from Muse, Panic at the Disco, Def Havana. What do you want to see in future content and what albums are you most excited about this year? Should we keep it strictly on an electronic, hip-hop, lo-fi tip, or do you want to see some more pop rock inspired music and breakdowns? Do let me know. I'd greatly love to hear your opinion. As always, guys, I thank you so much for stopping by. Food on the mind. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.